Hey y'all, so this is Sheila. So this is going to be a little bit different. This is my testimony on my walk with Jesus and where I am now. So but anyway, before I get started, I claim that Jesus came in the flesh, bled and died on the cross and rose on the third day. And he's speaking. He's my Lord and Savior. He's my everything. So, all right. So, I guess back in I don't know, somewhere in my childhood, we went to church on occasion. We really weren't in church. So there really wasn't a foundation, so to speak. But I know maybe elementary wise, somewhere in there, we were involved in a church, lived in a small town, and small church, everybody really close, close knit. So I do remember, we'd do Bible study there, and we'd get picked up on the church bus, that kind of deal, but as far as really getting anything out of it, not so much. I don't remember. It was just, it's what we did kind of deal. So moving from that, sorry, I don't mean to move around too much. So aside from those elementary days, going into my teenage years, there was some church hit or miss. Living in the South, Southern Baptist, the Baptist belt. So went to a Baptist church here in town, and it was all right. It's what everybody, it's all right. I there again, honestly, I didn't really get anything out of it, and I don't remember really being there that long. I remembered the pastor. I'd ask questions. I wanted to know stuff, and one of the biggest things, you have, if you've grown up with animals, you want to know, what's going to happen to our animals when they pass away. So, and I remember asking the pastor sitting on the front row pew, do they go to heaven? And he's like, no. Y'all, that broke my heart. I was like, how in the world could they not go to heaven? And it just, I don't know, it just shook me, I guess you could say. So other than that, there really wasn't a lot of church involvement growing up, into my teenage years, until after, I got married, had my boys. They were young, so we were going to another Baptist church. So, and this was before, everybody started going kind of non-denominational. And I don't know why we really quit going. We just didn't. So yes, so during the times that, my boys were growing up, it was hit or miss. So moving past that, so that was probably, into my 20s. And then my 30s, we went to another church. It was, this one was like a non-denominational. So, we were going through the motions there, and, just, we had a lot of friends there. We hung out. We had some that we were really close with. And so that just seemed to be the thing, I guess. I don't know. Hey, there's really no right or wrong with this. My kids played with their kids, and it was great, and it was, what do you do? So, but anyway, with that church, after a while, something happened with the pastor, and the pastor had been charged with pedophile. They found a bunch of stuff on his computers in the church, and it split the church. So ultimately, that split our faith and going to church. And for a while, we didn't go to church. So tried other churches, nothing, just didn't find that right fit. So there, when you look at the family dynamics, when you no longer have God anywhere in the house, or our lives for that matter, that marriage eventually dissipated as well. And that started some of the dealings with my oldest son at that point, I guess. I don't really know where it began, to be honest. You think as a mother, know and see all, and then, you somehow get the worldly wool pulled over your eyes or something. Anyway, my oldest at that time started apparently dabbling with marijuana. It's just, I guess that's what some of the kids do. They're curious, and growing up, I can't say that we didn't try stuff. I tried it, but anyway, that was my life, All right, so moving fast forward, my boys and I, their dad and I, we split, we divorced, and I believe that caused maybe a spiral of guilt maybe on my oldest. Saw my oldest really starting to spiral. So, and he got mixed up in a lot of drugs. The marijuana became one thing, and then, lo and behold, we're dealing with heroin and opiates, and the whole 9 yards. So with that caused a big gamut of stuff, and just caused a lot of problems with mental illness, and not really having, not having God in that center. Really didn't even consider it too much. Honestly, I just was so far in the world with that. So fast forward, let's see here. Trying to think here. So yeah, so once I was divorced, just getting over the initial roller coaster ride of having a divorce, trying to find my way again, in and out of relationships, trying to find my worth, feeling wanted, having that close family connection again, where something just felt familiar, During that time, I was in and out, like I said. Had lots of things that hurt me in the middle of some of these relationships, but I did what I could. I worked, I went out, did the worldly thing. Still didn't have God there. I knew of Jesus. I believed in Jesus, but I didn't have him in my life, if that makes sense. So fast forward, I'm still dealing with stuff with my son, and by then things have started to kind of pick up. But so I meet somebody else, we get married, but during this time that we're dating is when things were really ramping up with my son. So needless to say, even during that time, we were trying to go to church, get planted into it, really, get God in the center of our lives. And, so that we had that rock, we had that foundation, and still just did not find it. Something just never felt right with the churches that we went to. And so, but anyway, so we made do, we got married, but, the marriage started off kind of rocky as it was because of all of the stress going on with my son. Because by then, things had really escalated, and in and out of the hospital for one reason or another, just from the drug use. I'm not going to go into detail on that because it's a lot, and for the sake of this, just know that it was bad. There were surgeries involved. It was just, we'll leave it there. So you can imagine the stressors that put on. The drug use got worse. And, I just was burning the candle at both ends. I still didn't have Jesus at that point. Again, I knew of Jesus. But I just, I guess you could just say I was overwhelmed. Burning the candle at both ends, trying to keep a household stable, while everybody else was going at each other's throats in the house. It was just not, it just wasn't good. And then trying to work, I worked a little bit of hospice. And then I worked in the ER. So I have a wide range of nursing background. And then, then COVID came around, trying to get my bachelor's degree, my son going in and out of the hospital. And, where was Jesus at this? Where, I still hadn't fully even called out or whatever, I prayed, I believed, but, I had not had that full surrender of my life over to Jesus at that point. So fast forward that, my son didn't get any better. He came home on hospice. He wanted only me at his bedside, so I was his mother and his hospice nurse. So, yep. And that was in 2022. So my son passed July 4th, 2022. And after that, I think our marriage suffered because the communication kind of died off. I don't think anybody knew what to say. I buried myself in my work, and I slumped down into a depression. Didn't want to get out of bed on my days off. So I just, it's hard. So somewhere during all of that, I came across Mandy's videos on TikTok. I had injured my knee, and I was bored. Sitting at home, I couldn't really do anything because I had a small meniscal tear, and I had to let it heal before I could really get back on my feet. Because, as a nurse, working on concrete floors and stuff, it's hard. It's hard on the joints. So anyway, I downloaded the TikTok app, and I was like, okay, let's just check this out and see what we got. It's just dabbling around, and I stumbled on some of Mandy's videos, and I started watching them, and they resonated. I took them to Jesus. I started praying to Jesus and just truly asking him to come into my life and reveal things to me, asking if what he was giving her at that time were true. I never heard any different that they weren't true. I never felt in my spirit anything was false. So, and I looked forward to the next message, and, and I knew people around me thought I was crazy. I would try to talk about stuff, and I got a little passionate with it, and, so I guess they thought I kind of jumped off the deep end. So be it. It is what it is. But during that, I don't know. So that was going into 23, kept watching the videos, and probably towards, I don't even know, sometime the end of 23 going into 24, I'd reached out to Mandy because she would come to this area. Her mama lives here. Um, so when Jesus felt it was right and whatnot, we were able to meet. We actually got to sit and have a meal together, and we talked and just, it was just casual. It was great, and took some time. She prayed over me, or prayed with me, I should say. And I would say, I don't know, it was a few months later, I guess, that's where Jesus had let Mandy know that it was time for me to come in, that I was actually part of the group. So with that walk came issues, not, people not believing here in the household. My husband not believing me. Yeah, I was excited. I gave him some dates. I told him some stuff, and I think he got a little overwhelmed. And there, that, he got a little on top of everything else that was going on. That didn't help. But, I know Jesus was leading and guiding all of this. And so where things went is where they went. But I do want to make it very, very clear that Mandy did not have anything to do with anything going on in my marriage, ever. Never has. She's never meddled. She's never done anything. So I would appreciate it very much if y'all would just put your stones down, because she's had nothing to do with it. So, things happen in a marriage, and I know Jesus has his hand on what's going on currently right now. And, it's, it's going to be all in his timing of where things go next. So, but anyway, so that is pretty much my walk right now. I don't know if there was anything else that I wanted to add with this. I don't know. I mean, I know, like, even in my career working, whatnot, especially when I was called into hospice and whatever, I knew Jesus was with me, and I knew and I felt Jesus guiding me, things to say to the patients, the families, just, being there. So, being a light. So, and then the same in the ER. Met all kind of walks of life in the ER and touched many lives there. A lot of broken people out there, y'all, a lot. So, so I know Jesus has been with me through all of that, and even through the traumas of losing my son. He has really he's done a lot. He's really healed me from a lot of the traumas. And again, I'm not going to even say half the stuff that I dealt with and that we saw in this house, things we heard. I just you wouldn't believe me if I told you. So, but it was bad. But I know that Jesus has him, and I know that he's making Jesus proud. And that's that. So that, so now, that's where that ended, and shortly after that's where my walk truly started, and where Jesus truly woke me up. He woke me up big. So, so my walk with him has greatly, it's strengthened, it's deepened, and I couldn't imagine my life now without him. And, and it's all about having that faith, that childlike faith. Are you going to have some times where you might doubt? Sure you are. That's part of the walk. And then you grow deeper and deeper, and you trust. And you know that he's speaking, and you know that he's showing you things. So up in, to this point with this journey, he's really opened my eyes. He's healed me from a lot of stuff. We've gone into the wineskin process. And I'm going to tell you, some of the stuff that you're going to surrender or hand over to him with the pain and the traumas, it's going to be like pulling a Band-Aid off of a hairy arm. It's going to hurt at first, but once you truly, truly give this all to him, he takes that pain away and gives you his peace. And it's a peace unlike anything that you've ever experienced in your life whatsoever. So, but it's very important to do this wineskin process. No one is exempt from it. Even Jesus wasn't, y'all. So yeah, I'm just continuing on, and I look forward to the other things he has in store, other things he wants to show me. I do hear his voice. I know he's speaking. I feel his presence. It's childlike faith. It's trusting. So it's trusting in a broken world, and where everybody thinks you've lost your ever-living mind. But that's okay. I don't mind that. It's not about that. It's ultimately about saving his children. So I'm fine looking crazy. I'm fine sounding crazy if I tell somebody Jesus loves them or whatever. So, but in a nutshell, that's my story. Trying to think if there was anything else. I know I made little notes here, just real quick. No, I think that's it. I don't really feel led to share much more than that. I mean, that kind of sums it up in the long and the short of it. So I pray this finds you well, and God bless y'all. Love you. Bye.